People die every year. We won't hear. We are taking this time to remember them, to mourn the woman killed by her husband, the toddler who found his father's gun, the teenager in front of her house, the person at the church, the person at work, the person at the mall, the child at school. To remember all the victims of gun violence. To remember the lives that we can never get back. To remember the survivors whose lives are changed forever, sending them love. Remembering Sydney Aiello, who took her life this week after suffering from PTSD and survival's guilt since the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. To remember Columbine, Las Vegas, Sutherland Springs, the Tree of Life Synagogue, Aurora, Colorado, Santa Fe High School, and Parkland, Florida. I could go on, but to remember the reason this started. Alyssa Al-Hadaf, Scott Beagle, Martin Duke Anagano, Nicholas DeWart, Aaron Face, Sharman Shintrup, Jamie Gutenberg, Chris Hickson, Luke Hoyer, Carla Lugran, Jenna Montalto, Joaquin Oliver, Alina Petty, Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, Alex Shatner, Peter Wang. To remember every other name that I'm not able to say today. Please join me in this moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Doran. Hey, Oklahoma. I'm Jamie, and the last time I spoke to you guys, it was on this same stage, in front of this same building, about this same issue. One day, I won't have to stand here and talk to you guys about this, but until then, thank you for being here. Thank you for fighting with us. In the years since we last met here, a lot has happened. Governor Stitt signed permitless carry into law. It's incredibly discouraging to watch our state take a step backward, but just seeing you all here today gives me hope for Oklahoma. Sometimes after watching our legislators vote against public safety, after reading Facebook comments, it can feel really lonely in the gun violence prevention fight in such a red state. But your presence here reminds me that we aren't alone at all. Maybe our state is taking a step in the wrong direction, but on the national level, we might be getting somewhere. In a very surprising move, President Trump has banned bump stocks, and last month, Congress passed H.R. 8, a bill to expand background checks to private firearm sales. This was the first gun violence prevention bill to be heard on the House floor in 2 decades. That would have been impossible if it weren't for the tireless efforts of Moms Demand Action, Students Demand Action, and March for Our Lives students across the nation. So to everyone who fought tooth and nail for this, and especially to our own Congresswoman Kendra Horn, who voted yes on H.R. 8, we say thank you. I've had the honor of working with an extraordinary group of organizers to put this event together for 2 years now. They come from communities from every corner of Oklahoma, from every background imaginable. You're gonna meet some of these activists in a few minutes, but for now, I'd like to take a moment to recognize them for their hard work. March for Our Lives organizers, please stand up, raise your hands, and please give them a hand. I would also like to take a minute to recognize the elected officials who joined us today. If you're an elected official, please stand or raise your hand. Thank you for being here today and listening to the voices of your constituents. I'm glad to see that you guys are here with us and you're listening to what we have to say about this. One more well-deserved shout-out goes to the donors who helped fund this event, the volunteers who helped put us all together, and the organizations who partnered with us. I'd also like to thank Cherie Dickerson especially for being an absolute lifesaver. This march would not happen without Cherie. Thank you so much. While we're here, you guys should take the time to check out the organizations who are tabling here today. You can get involved with a group like March for Our Lives, Moms Demand Action, Youth Enacting Change, the Young Democrats, and more. If you aren't registered to vote, you can do that over there. If you see your elected official, come here and thank them today. So our first speaker is Noah Paul. His pronouns are he, his, him. Noah is a junior at Yukon High School, and he's the founder of the Yukon High School Sexuality and Gender Alliance, as well as a 2-year organizer with March for Our Lives, OKC.
Hi everyone, I'm Noah Paul and my pronouns are he, him, his. I'm an LGBTQ+ student activist living outside the OKC metro area attending high school. In the middle of my freshman year, I remember hearing an announcement come on the intercom. Lockdown, lockdown immediately. There's a possible intruder coming towards the building. This is not a drill. Our teacher screamed at us to get into the corner in the darkness and to be silent. I wish I could describe to you the fear that I felt. Panic, panic, panic. I remember my chest tightening and my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears and feel it in my throat. I got over near the other students as fast as I could. There's a shooter, my classmate whispered to her friend next to her. I mean, I don't know, they said. Feels like they happen every day. I looked up and around and realized I was surrounded by glowing white screens. All of my classmates were texting their families, telling them that they loved them. One girl was comforting her 2 friends and tried to coax them both out of having an anxiety attack. I kept thinking to myself, how is this normal? How is it a reflex that when we go on lockdown, everyone's first instinct is to tell their family they love them because they might get shot in the middle of Spanish class? Minutes passed like years. A voice came on the intercom and said, "Lockdown is over. I repeat, lockdown is over." It turned out that it was just a police chase on a stolen car. Thinking back to how normal it was that someone would come into our classroom and kill us is disturbing. We cannot let mass shootings become something that is an everyday occurrence, a weekly occurrence, or a yearly occurrence. It should just never happen. The amount that American citizens have been desensitized to mass shootings is horrifying. On March 14th of last year, myself and hundreds of other students walked out of class for 17 minutes. I remember walking out of my geometry class after taking a test, holding a sign straight up in the air saying this should not be normal because it simply shouldn't be. The combination of lax gun restrictions and animosity towards marginalized communities isn't touched on enough in the gun control debate. There's an incredible link between white toxic masculinity and mass killings, with at least 57% of America's mass shootings being committed by the same cookie-cutter mold of a white male that was a lone wolf who was bullied into murdering his classmates. An astronomical amount of white shooters are white supremacists. Toxic masculinity and white supremacy literally do kill people.
Yes.
On an average day in America, at least 96 American citizens are killed by firearms. This is unacceptable and must be changed immediately. These senseless acts are destroying lives and leaving holes in communities that can never truly be healed. The children that were slaughtered by a madman at Sandy Hook should be entering middle school. Several students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School should have had their parents watch them accept their diploma, but couldn't because their angel was murdered in the place they should have felt safest. Examining toxic white masculinity is essential to the issue of gun violence. Every month in the United States, 50 women are shot to death by their partner. The LGBTQ+ community has consistently been a target of gun violence for years upon years. In 2016, 49 Latinx and LGBTQ+ people were murdered in Orlando, Florida at the Pulse nightclub. We must take action and hold our representatives accountable for their voting records and how they prioritize the safety of the American people. It's embarrassing that virtually every country doesn't have this issue, yet America, the land of the free and home of the brave, has its citizens afraid to go to school, the library, the movie theater, or to church because some maniac walks in with an AR-15 they bought at the nearest store. Whether you are Asian, atheist, agender, bisexual, black, brown, Buddhist, Christian, disabled, fat, female, gay, gender fluid, gender queer, Hindu, indigenous, and immigrant, intersex, Jewish, Latinx, lesbian, male, multiracial, Muslim, non-binary, old, Pacific Islander, pansexual, queer, seeking asylum, sick, transgender, two-spirit, undocumented, white, or young. We all deserve to be safe. All of us. In America, you can buy a weapon that can kill dozens of people in seconds before you can buy a drink. Thoughts and prayers have never been enough, and they never will be enough. There is a simple, easy way for our politicians to clean the blood they have on their hands. The vast majority of Americans support stricter gun laws, universal background checks, and think that Congress should do more to prevent mass shootings. And how do we ensure that our views are reflected by those who represent us? We hold them accountable. We march for our lives. We vote. We register people to vote. And if our elected officials don't represent us, we don't vote for them in the first place. And we vote for people who do stand up for us and those who are different from us. No matter their race, sex, sexuality, gender identity, gender expression, religion, or country of origin, gun violence affects all of us, no matter who we are. If you or someone you love has been affected by guns in a negative way, I would like you to raise your hand. Look around. America can become better than what you see. I have hope for our future. Seeing everyone here today gives me faith and optimism that we will be better than okay, better than living through this. Together, we will end gun violence. We are stronger when we are united. We can't accept this as being the way it will always be. In 2020, I will be able to vote, and I'm urging all of you to do the same.
Yes.
It'll take time, but we will change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Our next speaker is Rosa San Roman. Rosa's pronouns are she, her. She's a sophomore electrical engineering and pre-law major at the University of Oklahoma. She's involved in the Student Government Association and the Student Advisory Board to the Board of Regents.
Rosa!
A little short. Okay. First, I'd like to thank you all for coming out here despite the crazy weather we've had today. I vividly remember the exact moment I found out about the tragedy at Stoneman Douglas High School. I remember it so well because it was in that moment that I made an important realization. It was Valentine's Day, one of my favorite holidays, because I was taught that it was a day of love, friendship, and overall gratitude towards the ones you love. I was in my dorm eating lunch with my roommate when I got an alert from CNN on my phone saying there had been a school shooting in Parkland, Florida. And I simply thought, another school shooting. Shootings had become the norm. They were just something that happened. Like tornadoes and hurricanes, they could not be stopped. We just had to brace ourselves and hope the impact wasn't as harmful. How sad is that when you think about it? How sad is it that years of inaction and neglect from our government left me thinking that shootings were inevitable, that nothing could be done about the countless lives lost to gun violence, that thoughts and prayers were truly the only things our lawmakers could give. I did not know at the time of the strong presence of greed in our political system. I did not know that many of our politicians had become puppets for pro-gun organizations. However, I quietly learned and I noticed a pattern. You see, a few days after shootings happen, reports are released regarding the suspects. Often, we learn that the suspects had been reported or questioned before. Once, we even learned that the shooter had been on the FBI's watch list. And we learned that there had been many signs. More importantly, we learned that oftentimes it was the very laws in place that allowed the wrong people to obtain firearms. I guess not everyone thinks it's common sense to let just anyone obtain a gun. That is why I joined this movement. I no longer believed we were defenseless against gun violence. I believed in the movement, but I knew we had a hard battle ahead of us. Because when this movement started as a youth-led movement, lawmakers thought it was an attention-seeking act. They thought we were doing it for selfish reasons. We proved them wrong when they said our advocacy was just a trend or social media stunt. We have shown that we are not here for ourselves but for our communities, and we cannot wait for change any longer. We just passed the 1-year anniversary of Parkland and the 20th anniversary of Columbine. That's 20 years. We have needed change for at least that long. But we need real change, and we will not stand for irrational policies that lawmakers with hidden agendas try to pass, all because they cannot bear to lose their precious NRA money. And we will not accept that, because the problem of gun violence is even bigger. And when they say that the solution is a good guy with a gun, in fact, when Kevin Stitt justifies permitless carry with that very phrase, we will remind them that good guys with guns have been unfortunately shooting unarmed minority members for years. Because this is more than just about safeties in our schools. This is about safety in our churches, movie theaters, concerts, and overall communities for everyone, regardless of race. This is for every victim of gun violence whose skin tone was not light enough for their tragic and unjust murder to even be publicized, let alone receive justice.
Yes.
And this is for everyone who can no longer celebrate love and friendship on Valentine's Day without having to bear with the pain of losing someone to gun violence. We can change this, but it is going to take every single one of us, because innocent people are being gunned down every day, and many of them, their voices are silenced forever. Don't silence yours.
Thank you, Rosa. Our next speaker is Emma Lane. Emma's pronouns are she, her. Emma is a 15-year-old social activist trying to make a difference in several different communities with several different organizations.
Hi, I'm Emma Lane. I'm 15 years old, and I'm a freshman in high school. I was 13 when gun violence was first a cause of concern in my life. I was in 7th grade and hadn't even been taught about algebra yet when I was introduced to the harsh realities of gun violence. There was a break-in at one of my friend's house, and him and his little brother were killed by an 18-year-old suffering with a mental illness. The shooter obtained of the gun legally in the state of Oklahoma. At 13, I should have been more worried about what time I was going over to a friend's house or how long it was until the weekend. Yet I was forced to be more aware and more proactive of the gun violence going on around me. In 2018 alone, the United States saw 322 mass shootings, 387 lives lost, and 1,274 lives affected by gun violence. One of the reasons this keeps happening over and over again is the lack of resources and the amount of stigma for people suffering with mental health issues. 1 in 5 Americans has an underlying mental health issue, yet only 50 to 60% of these people ever receive the help they are needing. Over 10 million adults have a serious addiction and or mental health issue. These problems do not only concern the first-person parties involved. They concern every single one of us. They concern Donald Trump. They concern Mike Pence. They concern Kevin Stitt. They concern Matt Pinnell. And they concern Mitch McConnell. And they concern every single individual that cares about their own or their family's safety. I'd like to stress that I'm 15 years old and care more about all of your safety than our own president, who's 57 years older than me.
Yes.
We're told as Americans we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why does this not include the hundreds dying each year due to someone else picking up a gun? We've also been told that we have the right to a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yet the most common gun used in mass shootings to this day is a semi-automatic pistol. The Second Amendment was written in 1791, which at the time the most common gun was a musket.
Yes.
Which had a one round magazine capacity and could fire 3 rounds in 1 minute. Today our pistols can hold more than 10 rounds. Clearly James Madison did not have the idea of semi-automatics being used by the people of America when he wrote this 228 years ago.
Yes.
My hope is that no person ever has to sit down and hear that their friend, child, or family member has died from an extreme act of violence. It's up to all of us as Oklahomans and Americans to hold our government officials accountable. Call your state reps and state legislators. Attend local marches and local political conferences. Make the change you want to see for the future of your children and your children's children. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. The next speaker I would like to introduce is Mariani Lopez. Her pronouns are she, her. Mariani is a student at the University of Oklahoma currently studying human relations and women and gender studies.
Hi everyone! How's everyone doing? Good? But also be very upset. Anyways, so Jamie said my name is Mariani Lopez, and yes, I'm a sophomore at the University of Oklahoma, and I am also from Oklahoma City. So I want to start off by saying that on February 27, 2019, Oklahoma signed a bill that would allow open carry. I know, the shame. I'm upset. You should all be upset too. Our government has failed us before and it has failed us again. Having open carry will only continue to harm the lives of people and put us in danger, especially minorities. There has to be legislation that will prevent guns from falling into the wrong hands. Background checks need to be mandatory. Are guns more important than the lives of human beings? Kevin Stitt said that he believes that violence will not increase because of this bill. What? I had to reread this so many times to understand what he was meaning. Like, what does that even mean? He really thinks that? Okay, our politicians need to do better. As much as I would like to think that this will not affect us, it will. We are not safe with laws like these in place. It is now in our hands to ensure that the politicians we vote into power will not put dangerous policies like this into law. I want to close this off by saying that gun violence has always been an issue that still continues to harm Black and brown communities.
Yes.
Black and brown lives are lost to senseless gun violence every day, but it does not receive as much attention as it would with a white victim.
Yes.
I am angry and I'm disheartened, and it is unfair. We cannot talk about gun violence and mass shootings until we also bring into the conversation the Black and brown lives that have been lost to this violence. This is a conversation that needs to happen no matter how uncomfortable it might make you. The energy that you show for this movement, that exact same energy should be shown for the Black Lives Matter movement and for the lives that have been lost to senseless gun violence. To all of those lives who have been affected by gun violence, my heart and my prayers are with you. We will not give up until real progress is made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariani. Our next speaker is Madison Wood. Her pronouns are she, her. Madison is a student at the Academy of Contemporary Music and the Outreach Coordinator for Youth Enacting Change. This is her second year as an organizer with March for Our Lives OKC.
I'm standing here and I'm looking at the faces of those who believe in the same things I do. We want change, but how do we get there? I'll admit last year I was a little naive. I stood up here and gave a speech to a large crowd, but it was just fueled with anger. Anger at the administration, anger at our country failing our children time and time again. Anger at the people, still holding tight to their assault rifles when hundreds of American civilians are being gunned down around them. But to sit there and dwell on all that anger, it only matters if you turn it into action. And that's what I did, but I'll get to that in a minute. I've grown up a lot since last year's march. I witnessed more and more broadcasts of shootings, senseless gun violence, and more sweeping under the rug from the administration. Hadn't we learned anything? How many people have to die before action is actually taken? Thoughts and prayers is all people can say when a tragedy happens.
Max,
they don't show
definitely
anger
not
or
as big
rage
as
when it's
last
revealed
year,
that a shooter had access to
unfortunately.
guns due to poor background checks. They don't show anger or rage when 17 people are killed at school, 12 people gunned down in a movie theater, 20 children murdered at the one place their parents thought they'd be safe at, 59 people at a concert, leaving 800 plus injured, 49 enjoying a night out at a nightclub, or 26 during a church service. They don't show anger or rage at the amount of gun violence that doesn't get enough media attention, like the people killed in the streets they grew up on, or the smaller shooting massacres that are forgotten very quickly because they're too small in number to remember. Just thoughts and prayers, and they go on about their day getting caught up in the hustle and bustle of their lives as the lives of the people directly affected by these tragedies are completely uprooted. We need action, we need policy, and we need change. So we marched last year as a country and the unthinkable happened. Donald Trump must have heard my thoughts and prayers because he finally enacted policy and change by banning bump stocks.
Yes.
And I have no doubt in my mind that it wouldn't have happened without the kids from Parkland starting this movement and creating such an uproar in the streets of DC and everywhere else in the country, including here. They started a revolution, and we are a part of it. This is where change happens, and this is where we can throw thoughts and prayers into action. Now, how did I take action? I contacted my sister who was involved in the Drew Edmondson's campaign, and she brought me in and put me to work. I phone banked with her for hours, and I even hit the streets by myself and went door to door in unfamiliar neighborhoods. I put in the work, and even though we lost the election, to see the reactions of people opening the doors and realizing I'm only 20 years old and that I care this much about politics, that was rewarding enough. I told them about my friends here at March for Our Lives and what we accomplished last year. I told them how I wasn't the only one going door to door, phone banking, or getting directly involved with campaigns. I told them that we created our own organization called Youth Enacting Change. I told them that our youngest members of the march last year, ages 12 and 13, were so well informed that they knew more than I did at age 19. And instead of staying home and enjoying a relaxing day off from school, I told them how my friends lobbied at the Capitol all day long during the teacher walkout. They were mind blown. A lot of them told me that we gave them hope for the future of Oklahoma and this country, and that is how you take action. And if you don't know where to start, I know how most of you can get involved. 2020 is around the corner. Hit the streets, knock on doors, pick up phones, and be part of the change. But most importantly, vote them out. Vote in your local elections as well, because they are just as important. Do some research and find organizations to get involved with. Look up protests happening and ask to help with it, or just show up and give your support to the cause. Stand for something greater than yourself and really, truly make this country great again. I, along with several others, had the privilege of reaching out and inviting state legislators and other organizations to this event. The support I received wasn't necessarily expected. I only expected yes or no answers. Our revolution expressed their support and invited us to speak to them at their event.
Yes.
Eastern Oklahoma County Democrats told me they were so proud of us for what we were doing. And after I invited the young Democrats of Oklahoma, they told me, we do this together. We do this together. That's what my friends and I did when we campaigned, when we lobbied, and when we organized these marches. We did it together, and that's how the blue wave is going to rise. That's how we'll get these politicians with no experience out of office, and that's how we'll vote out the ones who don't care about the youth of Oklahoma, along with the ones who voted for the permitless carry bill, the same way we did when a handful of legislators voted against teachers in education. We voted them out.
Yes!
And that's how we'll take a stand against the gun violence in our country, together. Because none of this would be possible without each and every one of you. We started this together, and we'll end together. And as the presidential election draws near, we can't allow the Democratic Party to be split like it was in 2016, because that is what ensured the spots in the White House to people who don't deserve it. Stick together, stand together, and do this together, because this is our future, and our future is bright and blue. Thank you.
Yes!
Thank you, Maddie. Our next speaker is Devon Denton. Her pronouns are she, her. Devon is a nurse from Edmond who is currently running for City Council Ward 1. She's an avid supporter of March for Our Lives.
Woo, Devon!
Good afternoon. My name is Devon Denton. I'm currently the only woman running in Edmond, Oklahoma for any elected position. I'm running for City Council, and the vote is April the 2nd. I am also most proud of being a mom that demands action. I want to say thank you to Jamie and for the rest of the crew for inviting me. And here's what I want to talk about. I'm a registered nurse. A few months ago, the NRA put out a message towards medical professionals, doctors specifically, that basically said not to worry about gun control and stay in your place. the hospitals and the clinics that we work in, or do whatever it is that you do best. Just treat the sick people. Whoa. That action caused a storm of angry healers all over the nation, and here was my response. I do not have a gun problem. I have been a part of rural communities that have had to hunt and fish to survive to feed their families. I work closely, and my life usually depends on officers that can keep us safe. I have 7 generations of family members, both men and women, that have served in our military, protecting our future, both here and abroad. And I'm very proud of that service. I, my friends, have a bullet problem. As an ER nurse, I have been in countless situations with counting entry wounds. I have spent more hours looking for exit wounds. I have spent more hours than that looking for places that the bullet cut through as my colleagues searched at a fever pitch as all the blood drains out no matter how fast we pump it in. I've answered the questions of frustrated doctors, can anyone think of anything else to do before we call it? I have watched the patients gurgle and take their last breath. I have called the Oregon procurement team and asked them to please sign the documents and what would you like to donate. I have heard the machines turn from a solid beep as proof of life and turn to long hums and straight lines. I have held the hands of brothers and sisters as they ask why and what happened and how did this happen. And I've held the strongest men up in our community as they hold their children that are getting cold and as they are paralyzed by grief. The one thing I've never been able to get over in 21 years of service is a mother's scream, the bitter wail that never goes away. It is never mistaken and it is never unheard. As a medical professional, I have to take a deep breath. We have to say a quick prayer. We bless our babies in our heads, we wipe our eyes, and we have to get back to the busy work of taking care of the other patients in the hospitals. I want you to know that over 21 years, I have carried each and every single one of those incidents and every single one of those families and every single one of those peoples with me. Every single one of us do. I am here to represent Sydney Aiello, who committed suicide last week. Her parents stated that it was from survivor's guilt and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her and her best friend were on Parkland's campus. Sydney made it off, but her best friend Meadow Pollock did not. I am here to represent the victims of mass shootings and all of the medical professionals that tirelessly work with everything in their bodies and they give until they no longer have anything left to give. I am here for all of the GoFundMes that have been started with memorials and funeral services. And now I would like to propose a solution. If Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand can show kindness, respect, and love for the victims while still changing the laws in 6 days, why can't we? We already know that mosques, sanctuaries, church, banks, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, grocery stores, selling CDs, driving a car, being a security guard in a bar, dancing in a nightclub, Pure, dancing in a nightclub, California, or walking down the street with Skittles are all not safe places. So where do we go for refuge? I present that it's here, right here, our beautiful state capitol that's behind us. Here is where we start with the laws that are made, the policies that are born, and the people who are supposed to represent us. We have to keep reminding us that thoughts and prayers and our dollars and our campaigns, with all of those things, that this is our notice. If you do not represent healing and health, life and breathing, mothers that don't have to scream or moan or wail anymore, we no longer represent you. As a mother with a graduating high school student and one of the organizers of the first March for Our Lives, I am relieved that she no longer will have active shooter drills in school. A plan to a secret hideaway place or a secret escape with her best friends. And I no longer have to hope and wish that her friends are alive when I go and pick them up after school every day. I am here to say that the future is still furious, but the future is right now. Here are some easy places to start. Lock your guns up, put them in safes, separate the ammunition. Talk to your children's friends and their parents where they visit and ask them where are the locations of their guns and who has access to them. You ask them about their allergies and you warn them about their swimming or not being able to. Ask them about the dangerous things that they have in their homes.
Yes.
Join like-minded people that want to help with real change. Put your money where your heart is. Give your time, talent, and treasure to candidates like me who will not go quietly into the good night, but who will stand and fight over and over again. Vote. Get your friends to vote. Get your families to vote. Run for office and be the absolute difference and the absolute change that you want to see. I am not just a nurse, like some of my colleagues have said on Facebook recently with the previous comments. I am a nurse that heals my communities. I'm a nurse that births vision. I'm a nurse that stands with frustrated colleagues who are exhausted and who have caregiver role strain and compassion fatigue. And as of last week, 2 of my colleagues who responded to Parkland and Pure committed suicide because they could not do it anymore. I have a nonprofit that's called Operation Nurses Helping Nurses. That organization helps after disasters, either man-made or natural, for firefighters, police, nurses, and frontliners, everything from the 911 operator to the person on the ground with the people who are responding. And everybody has had enough. We never know when our last person is our last person, and we shouldn't do it anymore until we can't do it anymore. I'm asking you to support the medical professionals and my colleagues who do it day in and day out, and no one ever checks on us. No one ever says, hey, are you okay? And if you get the answer, yeah, I'm good, or it was just a long day, know that there's probably some more to that answer. So I want to support you. I want to tell you that I love you. I want to tell you that I have your 6. If you were ever in trouble, some of these young people will tell you, and some of the people in the crowd, that my number is always available. I am always open, and I'm always here for you. I'm also a candidate running for Edmond City Council, and I hope that you will consider it, share with your friends, and give me your vote. Thank you.
Vote Devon Denton, guys, if you're in Edmond. A fantastic woman.
Thank you, Devon. Our next speaker today is Wes Washburn. His pronouns are he, his. Wes is in the 7th grade and he is already a seasoned activist in his community.
Wow, this is definitely what democracy looks like. My name is Wes Washburn, and I am a 12-year-old 7th grader from Weatherford, Oklahoma. In the year after Parkland, many things have changed, but unfortunately, a lot of things have stayed the same. One of the biggest changes for me personally happened in the fall semester when I had a gun threat in my school. It terrified my mom and I so much that we decided to homeschool. Of course, we know that most kids don't have this option, and even with it, I'm not truly safe. There are still movie theaters, malls, and having to walk down the street. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Wes, you're in Oklahoma. It's so safe here. I'm here to tell you that that thought is wrong. Just this year, Oklahoma legislators passed a gun bill to remove permit and training requirements. It was bad here before, and I feared that it is only going to get worse. In the year after Parkland, there were 19 innocent lives aged 18 and younger taken by gun violence right here in Oklahoma. The state where people think more guns and less regulation will make us safer. That's a classroom worth of kids gone. Well, a classroom worth of kids in states that value public education. Today, I would like to take a moment to tell you about a few of the lives that were lost. We must remember them, honor them, and fight for a better future because of them. Messiah Brown was a 2nd grader at Discovery School. She was smart, outgoing, and a precious little angel. She was a member of the St. Brown Baptist Church and loved Christian rap. She had a passion for helping the needy and always knew how to put a smile on your face. Her favorite stuffed animal was a dog named Snicky. On October 14th, 2018, 7-year-old Messiah Brown was shot to death in her home in Tulsa, Oklahoma, along with her brother and her father. After the triple shooting, her home was set on fire. Eric Xavier DeGory was a high school sophomore. He was known for a sense of humor. His jokes could make anyone laugh, a friend wrote in the online obituary. He just made school so much better for so many people. On January 5th, 2019, Eric DeGory, who was 15, was accidentally shot and killed by a friend with a rifle in an apartment in Tulsa, Oklahoma. God, his mother posted afterwards,
Right now I hate you because I don't understand how you could take a 15-year-old boy who was loved by all. I should have been there to protect him. Roshana Stevens, who was called Sarah by her family, wore beautiful long box braids and a pair of smart-looking rectangular glasses. It was supposed to be a welfare check, but when the police knocked on the door of a small house in Oklahoma City, they found her and 2 others. Sarah, who was just 15, was found shot to death alongside her mother and her mother's fiancé just before 12:30 a.m. on January 7th, 2019. If you think these are hard to hear, I'm sad to tell you there are more. There have been a total of 1,200 of them documented across the country in the year after Parkland. That's an entire school worth. The obituaries I just shared with you were written by a group of students who took time to write them so we could remember them. None of us are safe or immune for gun violence either. African American kids and teens are 14 times more likely than white kids and teens of the same age to die by gun violence, according to Everytown for Gun Safety. Altogether, more kids die from guns than they do from cancer. Let that sink in. In the United States, more kids die from guns than die from cancer. Well, unlike the United States, New Zealand went beyond thoughts and prayers this week after 2 mosques were attacked by a terrorist. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced new gun laws just 6 days after those shootings. Why is it that we can't get our shit together here? My guess, the NRA and all of the money that flows into it and into the pockets of politicians. We aren't quitters though. We are making progress. Across the country, students have been working together to create comprehensive gun reform. We are writing bills, finding candidates to take down NRA-funded politicians, and most importantly, we are listening to students of color to learn the best ways to support them. They have been in this fight longer than we have. In conclusion, I would like to ask you all to join me in 19 seconds of silence for the 19 lives lost in Oklahoma in the year after Parkland. We can never get them back, but together we can say enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Our next speaker is Rebecca Yanez. Rebecca's pronouns are she, her. She's a freshman at OCCC majoring in political science. She's the chapter lead of March for Our Lives Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma delegate for 18 by 18, a writer for You Go Girl Oklahoma, and the advocacy team leader for Youth Enacting Change.
I was taught that if something is wrong, you fix it. You don't ignore it, you don't pretend that it's not there and try to conceal it. You don't send meaningless thoughts and prayers, and you don't try and do things only for yourself, but rather try and help people around you. But something is wrong here, and it's not teenagers being addicted to their phones, and it's not the amount of times that I probably drink coffee, which is probably too much. Anyways, something is wrong, and it's starting with the building that's right behind me, and we need to fix it. And to do so, we must use our voices as we did in the 2018 midterms. In those midterms, we've accomplished a lot. We've had the highest youth voter turnout in history, and we've had flipped multiple districts across the nation, including District 5 right here in Oklahoma. And voted in more gun sense candidates across the nation in history in 2018 alone. However, this is not enough. Our fight for our future has only begun. 12 years ago, my father stood around where I'm standing today, fighting for the lives of immigrants, trying to fight a bill that was going to be passed that would harm undocumented immigrants. And 12 years later, they're still afraid for their lives, but not just because of the policies that have been implemented against immigrants, but also because of the fleeting gun violence that they have to face. They have been escaping violence from their countries only to face more violence here. And in 2004, Joaquin Oliver, who was a victim of the Parkland shooting in Florida, is an example of this. His family had fled from Venezuela, where you would get shot and killed for protesting the government, and they wanted to give Joaquin a better future, and he was only 4 years old at the time. And then in 2018, he was shot and killed before he could even start his life. His parents had to deal with a loss that they were trying to escape from. America is supposed to be the land of the free, but how can we call it that when our children, especially marginalized communities, don't get to face the freedom of living without the fear of being shot? It is no secret that this is a long-standing issue for people of color, and that they have been fighting for this issue for decades as inner-city violence and suicide rates increase, because no, gun violence is not limited to mass shootings. As we move forward in fighting for common sense gun laws, we cannot forget them, as they are the backbone to our community and to several movements across the nation. We cannot forget the black and brown lives that were taken by those who perpetuate a system of gun violence in which they constantly fight just to stay alive, because their lives matter. I'm aware that restrictions alone will not solve this epidemic. However, combined with other efforts such as disarming violent felons and domestic abusers and those whose mental illness affects their decision-making negatively, are absolutely necessary. In this country, a felon can't use their First Amendment rights to vote, but they can attain a firearm and kill someone. In this country, a suicidal person diagnosed with depression has access to a weapon to kill themselves. And for the record, suicide is gun violence.
Yes!
In this country, the same people who beat women have access to a weapon to kill those who they abuse, and this is unacceptable. On the topic of mental illness, we must be taking more efforts to reduce the stigma around getting treatment, because in order to combat gun violence, you have to be combating the other root issues of this cause, and part of that is mental illness. And overall, gun violence prevention activism is more than these colorful posters that you're holding, and it's more than these annual rallies. And so as chapter president, I will be working with other amazing co-leads into putting consistent and persistent effort into spreading awareness, talking to politicians, voting, and promoting community activism here in the Oklahoma City metro area, because gun violence is a major issue, and it is not a one-time thing. It is not a trendy social media stunt.
Yes.
It is a real, consistent, persistent epidemic. And it requires the efforts of all of you and all of America. So on a final note, I just want to say that if you are eligible to vote, please register to vote. You can either go to your county election office, or you can go online onto x18.com and click on the register to vote tab, and it'll take about 5 minutes to just fill in your information. And if you cannot vote because you're too young or you're ineligible to vote, please talk to your representatives. Be consistent, come to town halls, keep showing up to events like these. Your voice matters,
Yes.
just as the voices of those who cannot speak anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our final speaker today is Joshua Harris Till. His pronouns are he, his, him. Josh is the president of the Young Democrats of Oklahoma and is running to be president of the Young Democrats of America.
First and foremost, I want to thank you all for being here. It is our duty and our responsibility to not only be here and be present, but to continue the advocacy when we leave from these quarters. I had the opportunity to be here last year, and as I watched this youth organized event, I was inspired because when I was the same age as a lot of the people who stand behind me, I wasn't this involved in the political process. And a lot of us are still not as involved in the political process, and I advocate to you now, if this doesn't inspire you, what will?
Yes. Yes.
I want to take just a moment to tell you guys a story, but first I want to explain to you the definition of what a mass shooting is disagreed upon because there are so many different organizations who give their own definition of it. One of the most socially acceptable ones is when 4 or more people are shot in any given instance. In August of 2013, I received a call from my brother telling me that I needed to get to Dallas. I was present at a Young Democrats of America convention in San Antonio at the time, and he said, I need you to come home. When I got there, I was given the information that my sister had been murdered. Her mother had been murdered as well. My 2 little brothers, 13 and 10 years old, had been shot and were in critical condition. We found out later that another household had lost a mother, a 16-year-old daughter, her 16-year-old friend was shot, and her 10-year-old younger brother was in critical condition as well. When you look at the TV and you see these mass shootings happening, you feel a little bit of a disconnect. Sometimes we see them so much that we feel numb to the pain that is generated by the loss of life. I share my story with you today, not so that you can be upset or so that you can give me sympathy, but so that you can remember what it's like to feel that hurt for another person. We see all too often that these shootings are continuing to happen. And up until last year, gun violence was the largest killer of young people in this country. It outranked vehicle accidents, and has only been passed this year by opioids. So the number 2 killer of young people in this nation is gun violence. And we look on as the world around us understands that gun violence is a problem and begins to take action, and we see our country with beautiful advocates oftentimes having their messages fall on deaf ears. This isn't about coming into the home of law-abiding citizens and taking their guns away from them. But if we have to do that, then why shouldn't we? I ask the advocates for the Second Amendment all the time, at what point do we lose so many lives that we start to think whether or not the Second Amendment is a right that we should continue to protect? Because at some point, there has to be a number where the life that we lose is too high. I don't know what that number is. I don't pretend to know. I know that there are common sense reforms that we can make. And I know that we are here today to advocate for those common sense reforms. Honestly, this isn't a problem that gets solved tomorrow. This isn't a problem that gets solved this year. But I believe that if we work hard, if we support our young people, and if we focus on making a safer environment for everybody, that we can not only see the lowering of gun violence, but that we can eradicate unnecessary gun violence completely.
Yes.
As the president of Young Democrats, when I was approached by March for Our Lives to join up with them, it was a no-brainer for me. Because these are a lot of our young Democrats who are advocating for this change. Guys, this doesn't happen with one person. This doesn't happen with one group. It doesn't happen on one day. But if we continue to fight and advocate for our elected officials to hear us, and like last year, I see Rosecrans is the only elected official.
No, we have 2.
Oh, I'm so old. You got the hat on, you're being all incognito. I appreciate that the Democrats continue to stand up for these issues. There's not a lot of us in the House, but we are a vocal minority, and I know that you guys are going to continue to do great work. We can't do it on our own. They can't do it on our own. It's only when we join together. I see a lot of Moms Demand Action shirt. Oh, you know, we're here too. I show up and I volunteer with you guys. It's one of the best advocacy groups in the state. They hit the Capitol all the time. They make their calls. If you're not a part of that organization, be a part of it. If you haven't already donated to March for Our Lives, donate. If you haven't joined Young Democrats, of course I have to tell you to join Young Democrats because otherwise I would be a bad president. But I want to thank you, and I want to reiterate what everybody behind me has said. So many people that are way younger than me that are so passionate about this. This is the future. The millennial generation, we're doing all right, but Gen Z is going to create every single ounce of change that we've been wanting to see in the world, and I'm thankful for them. That's all I have to
thank you, Josh. So this is it. Thank you again for coming out here today and showing your support for this movement. I know it isn't like the trendiest issue at the moment, so the fact that you're here right now proves to me that you genuinely care and you're in this for the long haul. This rally may be over, but the fight isn't. Keep up the pressure on your representatives. Get involved with the gun violence prevention group. Every single person here is capable of creating change. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for showing us what democracy looks like again. Thank you. Bye, y'all.